And we're live. And we are live. Yes, yes. Welcome to another edition of Tuesday Talk. And we have, y'all know who he is. You already know who he is because he's been here before multiple times. People ask for him to come back. The questions are always nice and thorough because we're learning really great information from Sonjedi. Sonjedi is a really great teacher. And when you ask him a question, be prepared for a thorough, complete, and very dense answer. And I love it. Okay. So tonight, we're going to be talking about something that's really important, especially as we come into our well, not our, but the holiday season. It's important to know what our traditions and customs are and what it is that our ancestors celebrated. Why do you think it's important to know what our ancestors celebrated? Well, for one reason, it's because we get to see what they were doing. What did they do? And also, what did they feel or think was important enough to gather and to celebrate? One of the draws that Christianity and some of the Abrahamic religions still have is because people get to celebrate and eat and drink and be merry. And who doesn't want to do that? Well, we all want to do that. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce and to some and reintroduce and bring on back with other Scribe Sonjedi, who is the scribe at the Temple of Anu and who has had extensive study. And the brother is smart. He knows a lot. And so it's always good when we can have him on the show. Sonjedi, my brother, welcome.
All right, Archimod, everybody. All right, Hotep, Yamatep, peace. So, hey, thank you for having me once again.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for the compliments. Uh, I do the best I can to
Uh-huh.
be smart. Uh, none of us are perfect, so we're all on a journey. So, I'm always always looking to learn, always looking to expand,
Mhm.
never getting stagnant.
Right,
Never
right,
getting stagnant and making adjustments in the face of new information that adds to, your sense of reality and then adjusting to that reality. Right. So that's how we grow and expand, you know,
that's right.
and being open to our old ideas or current ideas, perhaps being challenged, but with information that may say, okay, this could become obsolete at some point.
Right, right.
You know. So, but it has to be through demonstration. Things aren't obsolete just because somebody says it's obsolete. Things are not outdated just because someone says it. It has to be through demonstration.
Right,
You
right.
know. So that's very important. Now you mentioned holidays.
So before we get started, I do just
Mhm.
want to just bring in a little bit of your background because this might be someone's first time watching Tuesday Talk and their first time
Mhm.
with you. So Sanjeti, can you give us a little bit because we really want to spend a lot of the time with the holidays because I'm excited too, y'all. I want to hear it too. I really do. Anyway, a little bit of your educational background, how you were introduced to the Medu and how you've been studying and with whom you have been studying.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that direction. So, a little bit of educational background. I went to Community College of Philadelphia. After that, I went to Delaware State University, HBCU. Letting y'all
In the
know.
house, in the
I should
house,
let y'all know.
family college. Right.
Um, I also went to the Academy of Health Sciences in Texas, so I did that as well. So that's where some of my stronger healthcare medical background comes from. I did CNA before. I also did medical assisting, years and a long time ago. So it's always healthcare medical for me. It's actually in the family, runs in the family. So my mother, she's a nurse, RN, got her degrees, etc. My father, same thing. My biological father, degrees, works for Morehouse College of Medicine, etc. So runs in the
Hey,
family.
did
Runs
I
in the
know
family.
that? Sorry, go ahead.
Runs in the family. Um, yeah. All right. So that's a little bit of educational background. And I'm back in school now on the nursing track. So yeah, always learning, always expanding. Never too old, everybody.
That's
All
right.
right. That's right. Okay. So that's the formal education there. Now, as far as metanatural is concerned, I've always been interested in Egypt. And I'll say Egypt because that's what I've known it as when I was young. As far back as 8 years old, I've been fascinated with it. That far back. The first time I've been to an Egyptian exhibit was in Germany, actually. And that's when I got my first, got some trinkets. I got a metal, well, I've known it as a sarcophagus back then. I didn't know any words like Neba Ankh or anything like that.
Right.
So I was about 7, 8 years old. Of course, throughout my teenage years, I did, like the Egyptian phenomenon. As a teenager, I was more heavy into the biblical Quranic studies. Um, so in Philly, you have a strong Muslim community. In fact, they say that Philly is the Mecca of the East Coast. That's what I was told. So, I mean, I was never
told
Muslim.
Hartford was the Mecca of the East Coast. So I'm just saying.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, hey, that's just what I was told by other Muslims. So, all right, yeah. So there's a strong Muslim influence in Philly because we have the beards and everything like that. Out of Philly, that actually is an influence from Sunni Islam, actually. So I grew up around Hebrew Israelites, 5%ers, Wapians, conscious Christians, I guess you might call it. It's everybody. So once I hit 19, I pretty much gotten away from the Abrahamic orientation and realized that I need to study Africa directly via Kemetic. Okay.
That's right.
So 19 years old. And I was actually doing artwork in my house, with Egyptian things. Again, I wasn't familiar with the word Kemet yet.
Right.
So I was doing it and then realized that, hey, I don't even know how to read this. So I went to the library, my high school library, because I was doing artwork when I was 17. So I went to high school library and got a book and started, reading directly about it because I was mostly reading books by Dr. York at that point.
Right.
That was my main reference. So once I moved on, from that group, I said I had to start over. I had to start from scratch. Same year I started college. That's when I got involved with the African Student Union. This is at Community College of Philadelphia. And the president of the African Student Union, and his name is Hannibal Casanova, Elder. He took me under his wing. So I'm always going to give him credit. He immediately made me like the vice president, because he wanted to show me the ropes. And then that same semester, fall semester, we went to Baltimore for a conference because he said, hey, there's some people that you need to meet. So we went down there. Of course, got the school to pay for it, which was cool. And that's when I met Ankh Ra. So Ankh Ra, their great ancestor, the author of Let the Ancestors Speak. I have the book right here. It's like falling apart, but this is my first meta-nature grammar book, if you will. Okay. I actually bought this in the spring of 2000. And this is when I'm on my own. I have no guidance, no teacher, anything. I happened to get this book from the Pearl of Africa. It was on South Street. So anybody from Philly, back in the day, everybody knows on South Street, the Pearl of Africa. And the owner, his name was Ahmed. He's an ancestor. So I used to go there all the time. I went in the store. I saw this book. I was like, wow, what is this? Let the Ancestors Speak. Mysticism of Meta-Netter. What is that? Right? So, and it said grammar. I opened it up. I'm like, oh, I need this. Ahmed, how much is it? He said $20. Boom. Took it home and I couldn't put it down. So fast forward towards the end of that year in the fall, when I met the author at the conference in Baltimore, Ankh. By the time I met him, I'd already been through the book like 3-4 times. I had another like writing notebook I done written in, and I tried and I showed it to him. He became my teacher right then and there. We stayed in contact over the years. Now my second teacher of Medu Neter is Infadishi Julidimes, Ka'in Haru, Hassan Kamal Salim. So all of you should know him. Y'all know him affectionately as Infadishi. Okay. You can tell I practice. I like to rattle off the whole name. Okay. So he was my second teacher of Medu Neter. And that experience, it had more of a, it was more integrated, if you will. So when I did with Ankh, it was direct, like it was scholastic, straight scholastic. When I experienced it with Infadishi, it was more, let's go outside and find plants and identify things. Look at these animals, look at the sky, so that added to my experience. And then eventually I met Raketi Amen, Sibat Raketi Amen. Now I already knew about her. I was reading her books ever since I was 19. But then I met her in my late 20s. Got acquainted, we emailed back and forth, etc. Then eventually she became my direct teacher as well. And to this day, right now, I'm an instructor for her institution, the Institute of Kemetic Philology. I teach a level 1 course there. So that's where I'm at now as far as education, Medu Neter. So I think I answered your first 2 questions.
You did.
All right. Try to be as concise as possible. All right.
So for those of you who don't know, Sonjedi was basically trained by the legends and the giants, like just happenstance that he just was able to be born in Philly and had all of that, which is one of the reasons why we bring this information to you on Tuesday Talk so that everybody can have access to it. So Sonjedi, tell us about these African traditions. Why is it important? These are just general questions. Why is it important for us to learn it? And what are they? What do they do? What do they symbolize? And remember, people, you can just watch it now and absorb it and then go back and take your notes and study. But remember, with Tuesday Talk, this isn't just for you to watch and learn. It's for you to do it. It's for you to do it. So the more you do, the more authentically African you feel. Okay? All right. Sonjedi, it's all yours.
Okay. So understanding your question, right? So I'll do the language piece and then do the culture piece. So I'll just put it all together.
Okay.
So language, it's important to know language because as my brother Wu Jiao, Iri Ma'at would say, language is the oldest witness of human history. So he put that in his grammar book. If you don't have his grammar book, you definitely get it. So human language preserves the psychology of a people. If you want to understand the people, you have to understand the language. See, because it's not material, it's immaterial, if you will. Rather like you got the archaeology, which is the physical artifact. You have the artifacts, but then the language, it can go all the way back to the beginning of human history.
That's right.
Now with Medu Neter or Sesh Medu Neter, as we're we're adding that in there, Sesh writing system of Medu Neter. The writing system, it preserves some of the older mentalities and mindsets from before writing came into play, or which you might call formal writing, where you have full sentences. Okay? Because writing itself is simply, you giving visual symbols that represents words, ideas, and it communicates with others in a mutually intelligible way. So writing is a language in and of itself. Language in the sense of its communication. It's a communication system. Just like spoken language is a communication system. So, and if it were to be technical, language really has to be spoken, if you will, because lang again has to do with the larynx,
Right.
language. So we kind of see the linguistic correlation there.
And then also for the language to stay live and dynamic and be the reflection of what's going on in that particular culture.
Exactly. So it's a communication system. So,
Right.
So meta-nature, such meta-nature, it preserves in writing human history, psychological history. And when you study meta-nature in a serious way, then it's like, you're going down the rabbit hole, if you will, or taking the red pill. I don't really do the popular blue pill, red pill thing, but for the analogy, if you really want to go heavier, then yes, you have to put in the intellectual effort. Because sometimes, in our circles, there's this like anti-intellectualism that occurs, where people who are scholars are looked at as opposite of spiritual practitioners, and then vice versa. And then there's this disconnect. So there's a lot of things that can't be done or accomplished or realized because of this disassociation. Now, when it comes to Kemet, there's no way around studying.
There's no way around it.
You have to study, and I'll be frank. It will have to define intuition. We'll have to get into that, but to be real, you can't intuit the deeper knowledge. You can't do it. Now, people could say I could do anything I put my mind to. Yeah, but you have to have the right model and method to do it.
Right. That's
so true. You can't, like, if you've never read or learned the English alphabet, you can't pick up a dictionary and say, I can intuit how to read this.
Right. Right. I agree.
Intuition has to do with understanding patterns. That's actually what intuition is. When you look the word up, that actually has to do with recognizing patterns. That's actually what intuition is. So if you don't understand patterns, then you're not intuiting anything. If you understand patterns, then you can predict things based on patterns. So the weatherman, he can intuit. When I see certain clouds, I can intuit it's about to rain, and then it rains. So you may have people who may not understand weather, say 5,000 years ago. Certain groups may not, but you may have someone who does. That person is a wizard to them.
Right.
So exactly. That he has intuition, because he understands patterns. Same thing with language, what we're going to be talking about here. And going into the witness of human history, how do you preserve that history? When you celebrate holidays and traditions, what you're doing is you are preserving memory. Okay? You want to remember your values, the things that made you great, the things that elevated you to go from one level to another in your society, things that help you to survive. Okay? Be it new discoveries, be it battles, or some type of great accomplishment, all goes into what you're calling holidays. Now, what are we celebrating? We're celebrating the traditions, which goes into the psychology.
That's right.
When it goes,
the traditions that go into the psychology, the group psychology, and the individual psychology that contributes to the group.
Yeah, exactly. So in order to realize that and get a full grasp of it, you have to read and assess and analyze what was left by those people as the evidence. So like today, we're going to do a presentation. We're going to actually look at two great pieces of literature. One we kind of went over, we've been exposed to before, but we're going to go just a little bit deeper this time. We're going to hit the language. We're going to hit some vocabulary words. And then we're going to go to one of the old kingdom tombs and read some of the values. But in fact, both of these talk about the values of what it means to be human, really. What it means to be human. So I hope I answered that.
You did. You did.
Right.
You about to put up your slides?
All right, let's do it.
Let's get in it. I want to give I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right.
I want to give a shout out to Tone. Thank you. She hit up the Cash App. Much appreciated.
All right, now let me know when you can see the screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Sean, are you back there? There we go. We got Sean in the background making everything sizzle.
All right, just let me know, because I can't see you.
Okay, it says African tradition. Yeah, you're up. That slide is up.
All right, everybody. All right.
Yes.
All right, so African tradition with the Kemetic focus. Ancient records as a basis for present-day practice. So, one, when you're dealing with Kemet, always keep Africa in your mind and how it's associated with other African cultures, West, Central, South, and East Africa, because that's going to help you with the context of what you're reading and what you're looking at when dealing with Kemet. Now, ancient records as a basis for present-day practice. So this here is an attempt to continue that push for practitioners to look at primary documentation. What do we mean by primary documentation? Primary documentation is you looking at the evidence, the artifacts, the writings directly, okay? And pulling from scholars who study the records directly. That's why it's important for you to go to museums. It's important for you to go directly to Africa to look at these things directly, okay? Not indirectly. That's why it's important for us to use resources that help us to learn how to read Medu Neter. When you go into a museum, you should know how to read these basic symbols, because we have those of us who claim that, hey, we're related to Kemet, this is our culture, etc. But yet, when we go into museums, how many people, and I'm going to be frank, y'all, how many of you can actually read what you're looking at? Okay. Now, we're not asking everybody to be scholars. Okay. So we have to have this hard conversation. How many of us who are Kemetic practitioners can go into a museum and actually read and not speculate? Remember, like I said before, you cannot intuit what's in the writings. The writings are technical. The writings tell you exactly what it's talking about. One thing you want to keep in mind: never ever attempt to interpret a wall, what's on a wall, papyrus, a facade, building, stela, without the context of the writing. Never look at a picture and say, oh, this looks like Moses, or this looks like, no, because the writing tells you exactly what you're looking at.
That's right.
Okay. So we have to educate ourselves on this. Okay. It is high time for those times to stop. We're moving forward. We are in an information age. We have no excuse whatsoever not to do some study, at least on the basic level. I understand that the high priestess of your temple, Anika, is teaching Medu Neter. You have it. You have a resource right there. There's no reason, why this cannot be done. Let's keep going. All right, contents. So we're going to look at a few guiding terms. Then we're going to look at a creation account. Then we're going to look at a biographical text. All right, a few guiding terms. So the first two we're pretty much familiar with. Then I introduce you to the last two. So tradition is what we talked about earlier. It is transmission of customs, beliefs, and values from generation to generation. So when we're dealing with Kemet, you have the transmission of customs, beliefs, values from generation to generation, primarily within the dynastic era. Now, once Christianity takes foothold, you start to get a break in the direct tradition, even though they preserve, especially in the Catholic Church, many of the holidays, we mentioned holidays, right? Many of the holidays on a Coptic calendar are actually ancient Kemetic holidays. They just put Christianity over top of it, but they kept the custom.
Sonjedi, can you give like a one or two definition on the Coptic Church for those who don't know?
Okay, so the Coptic Church is a church based out of Egypt today, the Arab Republic of Egypt, as it is defined today. So the Copts are ethnically Egyptian Christians. That's what Copts are. C-O-P-T. Copt, and Coptic, and Copts. So you have Coptic church establishments even here in the United States, and you can look this up. So when you go there, either they'll use Arabic or they'll use Coptic in their liturgy or the religious hymns and songs. So if you're familiar with what Arabic sounds like, you'll hear that. But if you hear something that doesn't sound like Arabic, that's Coptic, which is, watch this, a Kemetic language. Let me say that again, a Kemetic language. The reason why I say that is because there's more than one language spoken during a dynastic period.
Right.
Okay. And the evidence demonstrates it. So it's going to be conversation because we'll have people who have not gone that far or gone in that direction of study, I'll say, just kind of be politically sensitive. But those of us who have studied in that direction, we recognize that there is at least two different languages spoken in Kemet. The thing is, they use one writing system. So those who don't study the language in depth, you're not going to know that because you're just looking at hieroglyphs on the wall, not being able to detect dialects, which there's plenty of evidence for this. Lots of evidence. The evidence is overwhelming. Even in Coptic, Coptic is a Kemetic language, but modern scholarship, the consensus right now is that Coptic is the last stage of Egyptian. Okay. And Coptic as a language per se is Kemetic language written with Greek letters. So it uses vowels. But when you deal with formal meta-nature, such meta-nature, we're calling hieroglyphs, demotic, hieratic, the vowels are not written, even though vowels may be indicated, but that's a whole nother conversation. But primarily, they're only writing the consonants. But when you get Coptic, they're using the vowels in all the words. Okay. Even though, it's going to have its own particulars because, you're dealing with like a northern form of a Kemetic language, not necessarily a southern form. But again, that's when we get into linguistics. All right. Now, did that satisfy the question?
Yes, it did.
All right. Culture. Now we know culture, that's the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual expressions, social institutions, etc. So that's culture. So we want to understand some of these differences and understand what the commonalities are. Now, these two terms. Now you notice that here with Hemi, Masut, I didn't write the vowels because I'm transliterating from the meta-nature form or hieroglyphic form. But here, based on linguistics, I just did a little license here. So Waheme, because there's going to be a vowel that comes after this M. We're going to get into more vocabulary when we get into our text. Masutu or Masut. It means a period of repeating births. Period of repeating. So Waheme means to do again, to repeat. But we're talking about a time period. So that's why I put this here. Period of repeating and Masut, births. Okay. It's another way. Actually, let me put it in proper perspective. The French word renaissance, which means like repeating births or to be born again, a rebirth. It takes this idea from things like this. Okay. And this is an actual term in Kemet In fact, the rulers of the 25th dynasty of Kemet, who came out of northern Sudan, we call it the Nubian dynasty. There again, northern Sudan. So we have Pianki, we have Shabaka, etc. They call their time period Wahemi Masut. So this is a self-defining term out of an African culture. All right. And Wahemi Masut is when the culture reverses itself. So, for example, like the 18th dynasty, which begins what they call the New Kingdom, is a Wahemi Masut. Okay, it is a classical age. When you go to the 11th dynasty, 11th to 12th dynasty, they call it the Middle Kingdom. That is a Wahemi Masut. That is the classical period. In fact, a lot of the literature that you read from Kemet, classical pieces like Tale of the Shipwrecked Sailor, the story of Singlehat, etc. It all comes out of that time period as far as the proliferation of making copies of those stories. Comes out of this time period, the 11th and 12th dynasties. Then we have the Perjat, or Perojat, if you will, House of Eternity. So we understand that there's a term called mastaba. So they're not pyramids, but they're a type of tomb where the actual casket or stone casket is subterranean, meaning beneath the surface of the ground. So subterranean, but it'll have like a roof over it. So that's what you see, above ground. Mastaba, I believe that's an Arabic word that means bench. So I'm wondering if when the Arabs got there after in the 7th century, when they invaded, when they looked at it and just started sitting on them like benches. I don't know, but mastaba it means bench, but they're not benches. So mastaba technically is improper. All right. So let's look at creation accounts, but first let's look at coffin texts. Now, coffin texts are texts found in coffins. The content of the coffin text is a continuation of what's called the pyramid text. So, we're not going to go into the full history of that development, but so whenever you see caskets like this, wooden caskets or coffin, normally it's going to be what's called a coffin text. And coffin text will have prayers, affirmations. It'll be a way to help the ancestorized person or a sarified person guide into the afterlife or the spirit realm of the glorified ancestors. So the text serves as a guide. What you see in front of you is the text of Gua. Now, technically, this one, I think, comes from the first intermediate period, which is right before what we're calling the Middle Kingdom. So this is a coffin of Gua. So case of rectangular wooden inner coffin of Gua, recessed and colored hieroglyphic text and eye panel on exterior, painted hieroglyphic text on interior. And this image comes from the British Museum. So the caption at the bottom comes from the British Museum. This is an image on the inside of the coffin. Mm. So here, now this is too small for me to actually read it per se. So I have to, get the book that actually has the translations in it. However, we can, look up here. We can look up here and we could just look at two key words. We could look at this word here, and then we'll look at this word here. So this one, which is imak, or actually imaku, it means an honored one, a venerated one, imaku. And imaku with the W at the end, it is a masculine suffix. So if it was a woman, it would be imakit with a T at the end, designating the feminine gender. Here, even though the quell chick or the sign representing the wa or u sound is not present, but we can understand it because it's speaking about a man. So Imaku, the venerated one, or the honored one. And his name here is Guwa or Giwa. So those of you who do know a few monoliterals and biliterals, you understand that this is the God sound right here. So this is a jar stand. And then we have the rope, which is a biliteral, that's wa. Gua. So that's his name here. All right. Let's keep going. So this is on the outside. We're not going to look at the entire coffin, but just a few key points. So at the top here, we notice that this is read from right to left. Those of you who take meta-nature know that is quadridirectional. What do you mean? Quadridirectional, quad meaning four. So it's read in four different directions as its possibilities based on the figures surrounding the text or in proximity to the text, etc. So at the top here, this is what we're calling a Hotep D Nasut formula. Very common. Any museum that you go into, you're going to see this formula. So it begins here. I'll read it in part. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but just a little intro. So this is Hotep D Nasut right here. So these first four signs. So this is Hotep D Nasut. So here's your suit plant. Here's your bread loaf, and this has to do with the king. Here's the offering, and this is a stylized bread. It's stylized. So it's not a pyramid. There's a separate sign for pyramid specifically. But stylized bread, dough. So Hotep D or dough Nasut, an offering for which the king gives to Asar or Asari, Neb Jedu. So the Naba of Jedu. Notice I didn't say Lord of Jedu. Naba of Jedu. Naba of Jedu, which is a place. This is a city. Okay. So, and then this one is like Kenti, foremost. That's what this is here. So we'll pretty much stop there because then the text starts getting cut off. Here, you see Imaki again, or Imaku, excuse me. Remember, we saw that earlier, Imaku. So venerated one. At the bottom here is his name, Gua. So that's that jar stand. And then there's that, the rope or lasso, if you will. It's called lasso, it's biliteral. Gua. And of course, you see the symmetrical eyes. So this here, now let's get into a text specifically that's found inside of the coffin text. So in coffin text 1130. So anybody can type that in. Type that in, coffin text 1130. This is where you will find the four great deeds of Ra. It is actually part of a wider text. So when you read the four great deeds, specifically, it's only an excerpt or part of a wider text. So here, this image comes from Theophilo Bingo's work, translated into English in 2004, African Philosophy During the Time of the Pharaohs. So that's the title of the book. You all should have that, page 119. So this is where he shows the meta-nature. I did confirm this from his resource, which comes out of a translation by Faulkner. Then you also have the glyphs on meta-nature redrawn by Adrian DeBuck. So that's his source, and I checked it out. It all checks out great, and let's move on. We can use this as a guide. Now, what you have here is interlineal transliteration and translation. So the green, that is a transliteration. Okay, transliteration. So that's rendering the signs, the hieroglyphic signs, into the alphabetical system, into another alphabetical system. So that's what transliteration means, because sometimes I notice that people will mix up the word translation with transliteration, and sometimes we'll throw in the word decipher. So let us correct something. We're not deciphering anymore. When it comes to metanetia, there's no deciphering. That already occurred back in the 1820s, 1830s. So when people say, I want to decipher, that is actually improper. It doesn't, you're not deciphering anything. It was already deciphered. What we mean is, I want to translate a text. So we have to understand these technicalities and take accountability. It's about taking accountability and doing things right. That's the only way we're going to be able to move forward. Okay. So remember, transliteration is when you are taking the text of one language and then you're corresponding it with equal letters of another writing system. That's what transliteration is. So that's what we see here in the green. And then obviously we have the translation in English here. So we go up here. This first line here, this is an abbreviation, y'all. So you see the snake, and then you see the walking stick. This says Jet Medu, but it's abbreviated. Jet Medu. But in his original, in his transliteration, Obing only put Medu there, so I just put the jet in there, as a corrective measure. So Jed Medu, words spoken. That's what that means. You see, so it's Jed Medu, Meduing. So words spoken by. And then there's Shatau Renu, Nebercher. Now you've probably heard of Nebercher before. So they say Lord of the universe. Notice I left the word untranslated. So I just said Naba. Okay. So Shatau Renu or Renue. One hitting of names. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the transliteration. Moving forward, I'm just going to hit key terms. So remember, Jed says to speak. That's what that means. Words spoken, Jed. Jed, you see it again here. Says. Hetef says he before right here. So it says he before those who calmed the storm during the voyage of the companions. This is in brackets because the word Ra is not actually in there, but this is implied because we know that the voyage of the companions, they're associated with Ra. And Ja Mahatep or Hetepi. So proclaiming peace. So check this out, y'all. So the word Hetep or Hetepi, we know it can be used to mean offering, but it can also be used for peace. So here you have a text that uses it for the word peace. So you see it right here. So this is symbolically the creator talking. The creator is about to explain what he did in creation. But of course, this is simply one interpretation, one rendition. Let's go to the next. So it says, Wahemi Nachen. You see this? Wahemi, what did we say before? Wahemi means what? Repeating. So you could translate it as again. So we're building our vocabulary here. So Wahemi. So again, I tell you the fine deeds my heart or mind did for me. So many of us will say the word Ab means heart. Okay. So that's this Abi or Ibi right here. Ib, heart, my, Ibi. All right. Now we see this sign here, this J, this really a curved I. So it's not being used as a J sound. It's used the same way that this I is being used. I actually should have made this a curved I, but we'll just keep it simple. So Ab, it actually means mind. I'll tell you to find these my mind did for me. Because in all technicality, you're not actually thinking with your physical heart. Your physical heart responds to your thinking, but you do your thinking in your head. Okay. So that's why we have this word mind. Most people would translate this as heart. So, but we keep these associated together. Did for me from within the coiled serpent so as to end conflicts. So the creator is saying, These are the things that went on in my mind while in the midst of chaos, so within the quote serpent, so as to end the conflicts. So right here, the creator symbolically is being used as a model for conflict resolution. Let's say this again. The creator symbolically is being used as a model for conflict resolution.
So, Sonjedi, I just want to jump in and ask you a quick question. So, with this right here, with the four great deeds of Ra, were our ancestors taking this information, this Medu this script, and they were able to create a ritual or custom or tradition from this?
I don't know specifically from this. I do know some others. I don't know specifically about this, but this here is really about showing the values. But I'll weave in ritual parts that have to do with the values that you find here. So I'll weave that into the discussion.
No, you don't have to. I don't want to take you off of what you were doing, but I just wanted to see how we were connecting this to the customs and the traditions and some of the holidays.
Oh, it flows. It's going to flow. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We're going to get there.
He told me to wait, y'all. He told me to wait. Okay.
All right. So then he says, I accomplished 4 great acts. I accomplished 4 great acts. So he's prefacing. All right. It's kind of like when you write a paper, you tell them, you give them an introduction and then you actually tell them. So he previews. He says, I did 4 great acts within the portal of the horizon. And we know that the horizon is very important to people in Kemet because the horizon is associated with the spirit. Right? It is associated with Ra. In fact, the word for spirit, Ankh, is cognate with the word for horizon, Akhet. So you see that here.
Sonjedi, I'm going to jump in really quickly. Let your spirit and your car move you and hit up Sonjedi's Cash-App. It's scrolling at the bottom. We're getting a good lesson here. Sonjedi always does that. So let's show our love for him and his time and his knowledge. Go ahead.
Do I? So you basically previewed this part here. So this association between the spirit, which is Ankh, technically it should be translated as ancestor, technically, but the Ankh, because Ankh is a word for horizon, it's also a word having to do with light. So spirit, light, and horizon, 3 different words, but they share the same consonants. So when you look at rituals, there's rituals that have to do with the spirit, the ancestor spirit riding the boat of Ra into the horizon. And this is rituals because it has to do with the values, because they value the sun and the horizon, because the horizon and the sun rising upon the horizon and setting, appearing to set on the horizon, is likened to the human journey of life. So that's why today they say sunrise, that's when you were born. Sunset, that's when your physical body deceased. So we still carry that mentality today. Okay. He said, I created the 4 winds for all to breathe in their time. That was one deed. So the creator is telling us that this resource, their right to have life, is for all people to breathe in their time, for you to be able to, have abundance for yourself, if you will, which kind of actually goes into the next deed. But this is really your right to life. I created, which is here, Iri Ni. I created. Iri is a word meaning to do, an action. So I created. Creating is an action. Then the 4 great winds. So that's that Iri Ni. And that's a vocabulary we should know. Iri. means action, to do. Next one, I created the great flood. So that's that Iriini again right here. Iriini, I created the great flood. Agab, or. So Agab, flood, or, great. To benefit the poor and noble alike. To benefit the poor, horu, not heru, like the bird, is a different word. Me, like, or, great, noble. The poor, like the noble or wealthy. So that's your right to have resources for an abundant life. That was another deed. I created all people one like the other, commanding them not to do evil. So that's that isfet right here. So you see isfet. You only see the constant. Oh, let's go back up. So that's that isfet. Okay. When you have those holidays, those festivals, the festival of Sekhmet, the festival of like the drunken, of the drunkenness of Sekhmet, you're celebrating your right of life, because at one point, the story says that Sekhmet went after the people who were blaspheming Ra. Okay. So Ra sent her to punish them, but she was getting out of hand with bloodshed. So Jehuti and others devised a plan to feed her red wine, because it misinterpreted it as blood. So she got drunk and it calmed her down, and she transformed back into Hut Haru. So she was Het Haru at first, then transformed into Sekhmet, and then got drunk and then calmed down and became Het Haru again. That is actually a holiday. But when we study how mythologies work, there's indicators that story preserves a memory of a great disease that people couldn't explain. Because we know thousands of years ago, whenever there was like an epidemic, pandemic, a great disease going around, we would say that this is the punishment from the gods, if you will. Right? That was our way of explaining, because it was something that we couldn't see. We just see the results. So that story, it is indicative of a time when there was like a great disease about. And then once people started to recover and stop, and the death rates drop, it's like she was pacified, if you will. So that's a whole nother conversation. But just to kind of get the wheels going in your minds. So they were back to having an abundant life. So they celebrated it. Now they can breathe, if you will. When you get a sigh of relief, you feel like, whew, I can breathe now, right?
Yes.
That's a sigh of relief, meaning I have life, breathing. And in fact, when we have our ankhs, and Ankh is more indicative of breathing, actually. Because when you look on the walls and you see in Netcher or in Tori, same word, holding an Ankh to a Nasut, a king or priest, you would typically see the Ankh being placed at the nose or the mouth.
Yep.
So look that up. Look, you'll find it all over the place. Now, of course, we do have an interpretation that has to do with the gonads. That will be a modern interpretation. But when we look directly at the walls, you're going to see the Ankh placed at the nose and the mouth. So it has more so to do with breathing. And I think, definitely breathing is more important than what's going on down there, if you will, because you can't go 1 minute without breathing, but you can go a whole lifetime without what's going on down there, right? So as far as your survivability.
That's another show, Sonjedi. But yeah, you're correct.
Yeah. So breathing in our lifetime. So there is a ritual, which is part of the daily ritual, that was done in the temples. They call it, some Egyptologists call it the daily ritual of the cult, if you will. Again, if you want to look it up, you might type that in. Of course, we don't like to use the word cult, but sometimes we have to use these words when we're looking for things. So there is a ritual that has to do with using the Ankh. Okay. So that part's not necessarily the holiday, but it's a ritual. And in fact, there's a text called the Book of Breathing. So to relate it to this, I created 4 great winds for people to breathe in a time. The Book of Breathing is in the text, and then it has to do with ritual. Let's go back up here. So I created all people one like the other. So that's what? Human equality. Human equality is built into it. The creator commanded it so, if you will. I commanded them not to do evil. Only their hearts disobeyed my words. That was one deed. So doing evil is a choice, according to here. So you have a choice. So there's no, the devil made me do it kind of thing. No, when you do bad things, it's a choice.
It's a choice. And it also lends itself to the accountability, the self-accountability that's embedded into Kemetic and African culture. There are some questions that that are in the chat. Where was it? When did Sekhmet become Bastet, or did she? Can you explain the relationship or the interrelatedness of Het-Heru, Bastet, and Sekhmet, and then explain again a little bit. I think they need a little more clarity on the celebration surrounding Sekhmet, and then you can talk about the feast of Sekhmet with the Temple of Anu.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Sekhmet is a lioness. Mm-hmm. Okay, that is her primary zoo type. I'm gonna say zoo type meaning animal type, animal symbol. Mm-hmm. Bastet, or Bastet, if you will, that is a cat, a feline. So that's the difference. And of course, they're both from the cat family, if you will, but one is the lioness, Sekhmet, that's the primary zoo type, and Bastet is a cat, a female cat. So that's the difference. What in Het-Heru? Was that part of the question as well? Because again, I can't see the chat.
Yes, the Het-Heru part. Yes, like how did Sekhmet go from Het-Heru to Sekhmet, and just describing the energy of Het-Heru, Sekhmet, and Bastet, like the 3 of them, and then explain the Het-Heru, Sekhmet celebration of Sekhmet, like the story that you gave me. I think they need a little bit more clarity with that.
Okay, all right. Mm-hmm. So simply the commonality is that they're all females. All right, so that's 1. 2, in the story, when you look it up, you can type in and search the destruction of mankind. All right, so you can type in the word Egyptian and then destruction of mankind. That story will come up on the internet if you don't already have it in the book. I definitely recommend Ancient Egyptian Literature by Miriam Latham. Volumes 1, 2, and 3. So you'll find it, within those volumes. So in the story, when Ra finds out that humans are blaspheming him, basically talking trash, and he's an old man, he can't do nothing, talking trash, basically. He doesn't like it. He's the king, etc. And then he communes with a council, which would include his parents, Nun, Nunet, etc. Geb, Nut, they're all in this council. And they're talking about, okay, what we need to do to reprimand humans who are talking trash about Ra, blaspheming him. So they turn to Het-Heru. Again, this is in the story. And she then, in order for her to exact vengeance or punishment upon him, she would transform into Sekhmet. Now we know that if you look at the animal of a bovine is just another word for like cows and bulls, bovine. A cow is, especially female. The female is the cow and the bull is the male, but the female is more like laid back, chill, relaxed, cool tempered, if you will. Where a lioness is more aggressive. So it's based on the nature of the animal. So one animal, the bovine, the cow, is more relaxed in her demeanor, and lions are more aggressive. So the aggression turns on. This is about turning into Sekhmet. So that's what that's about. And then she proceeds to slaughter the humans who were blaspheming Ra. And then Ra observing this, Ra and the council observing this extreme behavior, because she was basically going overboard. So, okay, now how do we turn this off? What can we do? So Jehuti, representing the intellectual faculties of planning, of strategy, if you will, says, okay, let's give her something that looks like blood, since she's so the desire to be satiated, but her thirst cannot be quenched. So she's blinded by this rage. So if we give her red wine, which by color is identical to blood, she may not notice. So in the field where she was dwelling, she saw what she interpreted as blood. So she goes over to drink it, but it was actually red wine. So then she began to get drunk. And we know that when you drink, your nervous system slows down. So without getting into the physiological technicalities of what being intoxicated does to the brain and the nervous system, it makes you relax. And again, that's not talking about people who are violent drunks. That's another story. But it makes you slow down. Your coordination, the quality drops. So hopefully that answers the question. Okay, how does she turn back into Het Heru? Het Heru's the nature in this case has to do with being cool and calm like a cow, as opposed to a lion. All right. So I definitely encourage you to read that story. And for the person who asked the question, that is what your assignment is. Your assignment is to read that story, summarize it, and send it to either myself or Abut. So that's your assignment.
I'll make sure it gets done.
All right. So good, because again, it can't just be. It has to be more. We have conversation, we have explanation, but then we have to put in the other effort to read as
That's
well.
right.
We
That's
have
right.
to read. So that's the assignment for that person, and then you get it to us, and then we'll give some feedback. Okay.
So I have one more question, and then if you could talk about the Feast of Sekhmet, because that's a way that this that's in the text has become a holiday. So and a tradition, something that's done. The first question, or this question is, going back to when you said the Ankh is more like the breath. Are you saying the Ankh is closely connected with Shu and with the Ka?
I mean, they're going to have associations anyway. So the breath, so Shu is more like the wind, if you will. Okay. Now, I do recall reading in the coffin text. Again, I don't remember exactly where, but I know Shu, he's talking about breathing, definitely the wind. So that's where we get that association, besides the fact that Shu can represent wind. And the feather, feathers of birds are associated with wind as well. So that's the primary symbol for Shu. And coffin text is pretty extensive. So yeah, it's actually just as thick as a Bible. So, and that's just one text. So yes, it's in here. Abu, maybe if you could take note of that, and then I can actually get the specific quotes having to do with Shu and the wind and breath. I can
Okay.
send it and then make sure that person can get it.
So from the coffin text about Shu and who else did you say?
The quote about the wind and breathing.
Okay, Senli, can you make a note of that? The coffin text as per wind and breathing, and I'll reconnect with Sonjedi offline.
Okay, Feast of Sekhmet. So based on that story, at the Temple of Anu, based in Newark, New Jersey, every year starting the Gregorian New Year's Eve, we have a holiday celebration for the feast, which is called the Feast of Sekhmet, celebrating that event, and we have adapted and adopted it for our modern present day usage. So we celebrate that every year. So it's coming up. Definitely get your tickets and come and celebrate with us. We wear red and gold. Red and gold. Because remember, Sekhmet and Het Heru are associated as daughters of Ra.
And one last question, and then we're going to jump back into your slides. Were there any festivals honoring Jehuti?
Yes. So the Kemetic calendar, the Kemetic year is 13 months, 12 months or 30 days, and then last month is actually 5. So the first month is actually called Jehuti. Okay. In the middle, what we're calling the Middle Kingdom, so that's like 11th, 12th dynasty. During that time period, they called the first month Jehuti. And then in the later period, so we're talking like 18th dynasty and on, they switched the name out and called it Teki. So the first month is the month of Jehuti. Teki is another name for Jehuti. And the 19th day of the first month is the festival of Jehuti. So that's specific right there. Hopefully I answered that question. So yes, there is a festival for Jehuti, the 19th day of the first month of the Kemetic year, which begins by some accounts the end of July. But more consensus is beginning of August, and depending on the calendar that you use, it can start in September. But again, that's a whole another conversation. Okay. All right. We're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So the next one. I incline their hearts not to forget the West. Let's stop there. So this goes into some of our holidays and celebrations and honoring. I incline their hearts not to forget the West. What does this mean? So let's just go to a little translation here. So I inclined, okay, so eerie, any, okay. Their hearts, so that's that ab right there, ab-u, hearts. Their hearts, abu senu, or abu sen, that's what Egyptologists would do, how they'll transliterate it. We put the W there because it's plural. Not to forget, ears commit, emenet, amenet. So that's the West. Okay. What's in the West? That is the land of the ancestors, because that's the land of the setting sun. So that's where they would put their ancestors, on the west side. Here's the Creator telling you not to forget your ancestors. So this is very different from the Abrahamic implication that ancestor worship is against God some type of way. No. Here, the Creator symbolically saying, do not forget the West, meaning the land of your ancestors.
That's right. Listen up.
Okay. This is the Creator saying it.
That's right.
Okay. Watch this. So as to make sacrifices to the district. Actually missed the word here. The district Neteru. Okay. the translation, they'll say like deities. So the district deities. So that's what should be actually be there. Okay. So when they say, you know, don't make sacrifices to other gods and all kind of stuff, that's for the Abraham traditions. We give honor to our ancestors and other deities. So here, Ra does not have the insecurity of you venerating other deities. That insecurity is not there. Okay, you find that in Western Asia. You do not find it here. So let's look at that little vocabulary here. So Hetep Necher or Hetepu Necher. So this means offerings, the offerings of the god or the Necher. So that's what this is. So Irit, make. Here's like your sacrifices to. So that's in, to, towards. Sipaut or Sapat, which is a singular meaning district. Known, Greeks say known, but I'll translate it as district, or you can leave it untranslated. You can just say Sapat. Sapat, but then if it's Neteru, plural, and district is an adjective, that's why this has to be plural. So when you make a feminine word or a word that ends with a T, plural is ut, not to. Let me say it again. Like when you have sin, many of us say sin and sinet for brother and sister. If I want to say brother, I'll say sin. If I want to say brothers, I say sinu. Okay. Without getting into the technicalities, we're just dealing with the consonants here. If I want to say sister, I'll say sinet. But if I want to say sisters, I say senut, not sinetu. That's incorrect. All right, so there's no nice way for me to say it. So it's sipaut, district, but it's plural because neteru is plural. So same thing, sin, sinet, sin, brother, sinet, sister, sinu, brothers, sinet, senut is sisters. Okay. So as to make sacrifices to the district deities, that was one deed. So you have to make your offerings. So if anyone has ever been around those who practice Sheshe Lekba, or people will say affectionately Ifa, if you will, or Orisha worship, you know that making sacrifices or offerings to the Orisha is paramount. Kemet is no different. The same thing that occurs in voodoo. You have to make offerings, meaning you share food with your ancestors and your deities. That's what sacrifices really is about. It's about sharing food. Okay. So Kemetic practice actually looks more like Orisha worship. It looks like voodoo. It looks like these other African traditions. It looks like what's happening in South Africa, Central Africa. That's what it looks like. All right. I created. Now let's stop there. So this word here, sekeper ini. So the base word is keper. So you all know keper, right? You all know keper. Keper has to do with transforming, transformation, evolution. Watch this, development. So the prefix S is a causative. So you have the causing development, NE. So I created, but this NE or this N, which is what's called a subject matter form. Again, that's a grammatical feature. It means a completed action. So I developed the Neteru or Intoriwe. So Intori is a Fulani rendition of Necher. So the Fulani use the word Necher in their language. They pronounce it Intori. And in a way, that's plural. I just added that in there. Okay. From my sweat. Notice Sekeper Ini, or the Keper, which is evolved. So these other aspects or qualities in the universe develop, evolve. So the whole thing of evolution, listen here, brothers and sisters, the study of evolution is natural. It is not separate from our traditions. Okay.
That's right. That is right.
All right. There's nothing unspiritual about studying evolution. Okay, development. When you're born, you don't come out as an adult. You develop.
Right.
Okay. There's no such thing as poof, and then there was creation. Okay. Those type of stories are for children. Let me say it again. Those type of stories are for children, not adults.
They're not even for children, but go ahead.
Not, so as adults, evolution is a fact. It's already been demonstrated. So the work of the creator, if you will, the creative force, occurs through evolution.
That's right.
Okay? So that's why we have Keper, because Keper, the word Keper, as the deed to Keperi, it comes from a verb as the root word Keper, which means to be, to exist. And then Keperu, now that we deal with it now, it is evolution, development, becomingness, to become. So which means that the word Keperi as a deity, the word means the existence is what it means. All right, let's say it again. Keper or Keperi as a deity means the existence. So therefore, there is no atheism here. Okay? Because for us, God is existence for us. Now, this is across the board in Africa. Okay? We can demonstrate that this through Bantu philosophy, South Africa. We can go, pick your corner. Pick your corner, pick your time period. For us, for African people, as a general consensus, what you're thinking of as God to us is existence. You can't be atheist. You can't deny existence while you're existing. Okay, it's the ultimate oxymoron. It's illogical. The CD skips. You listen to a good song and the CD starts skipping. Like, what the heck is going on? Same thing. So, and humans from the tears of my eye. So you see a little wordplay here. Remech Remit. The scribes did that pretty often. So the linguistic association between humans and tears. So they wrote that into the story. That's how mythology works. Mythology is very important because mythology explains the psychology of people. Mythology explains the psychology and values and mores and ethics of a people. Okay. So that's that text. We're going to go to our next piece. Just one more piece. Well, this here is a continuous translation excerpt, so we don't need to go through that because we are pretty much already did. And then the next piece we'll deal with the biographical text. Are there any questions or comments? If there is, maybe we can wait. I guess we can wait till the end.
No, I've been checking the chat, and these are comments. Some of the questions are answered in the chat.
Okay.
We have some questions I'm going to save till the end.
Okay. All right. So now let's look at a biographical text from the early dynastic era. So this comes from the text of Marif Nebiff from Saqqara. That's where his tomb is. He's a vizier, or what's called a jati. So a jati is like basically like one of the highest offices of the land. So think about if you have the Nisut Bidi, the dual or double king, he's the highest priest of the land. But the highest administrator of the land is the jati, if you will. And then you have jatis under him, like you have the jati of the southern region, you have the jati of the northern region, but then you have the jati who's over them, kind of like a prime minister, if you will. And the only person that the prime minister answers to is the double king. So he's pretty much high up there. So in parentheses, I have an alternative pronunciation based on the fact from historical comparative linguistics that most of the words in Kemetic language end in a vowel. So it has a vowel consonant structure. So it's Merifanabafa. Merifanabafa. So that's another way of pronouncing the name, Merifanabafa, which to me has a more of a natural flow. Sounds more natural. Yeah. Merif Nebef is just like a lot of breaks in there, but that's another conversation. Time period, Old Kingdom, if you will. So this is the 6th dynasty, served under Pepi I, and possibly another king as well. And he had multiple titles. This man had over 30 different titles. 30 different titles. I'm going to have to do a separate presentation. I'm going to do it on my channel, which is the Scribe Sonjedi. So I'm going to do it there. I'll give a fuller treatment on this man here. So, and it's a new channel, so I'll be putting some content up there. So look out for that, Scribe Sonjedi on YouTube. All right. So let's get into
quick thing before you get into it. When I update, I'll update his flyer and I'll have that information there. So don't worry about that. Go ahead, Sonjedi.
Right. So the east wall of the facade. So a facade or facade is basically the outer wall of a building. That's what that means. So on the right-hand side, I tried to get the best picture I can get. So this, what you see here, it doesn't necessarily represent or reflect the translation you see on the left. So I just want to let everyone know that because we want to maintain scholastic integrity. So as to not give you the impression that what you see here is exactly here. But I wanted to show you at least what the wall looks like. But this translation comes from that wall. This is only like a small section, just to give you a feel for what it looks like. Okay. So let's look at some values here. This is what Merifanabafa is saying about himself. He's qualifying himself as to why he's worthy to be venerated, because the best witness of you is your own heart, is your own mind, because you can't escape yourself. So it says, I'm more excellent and better prepared in a better prepared Ankh or spirit than any Ankh. So it's not necessarily literal. He's just saying, hey, I'm up there. Okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know if y'all ever heard Big Daddy Kane. He did a freestyle on stage with Biggie Smalls. And he says, I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm just incredible. All right. So I always like that line that you said. So that's the feel we get from this guy here. I am an Imaku. So y'all remember that Imaku from that coffin text earlier? Imaku, I'm an honored one. In the sight of the king, he favored me, or his favored one. Okay. Meaning his greatness is being recognized by those in high stature. I am an excellent lector priest. Stop there. A lector priest, that is the Kuriheb. A Kuriheb is a priest who knows ritual and can read ritual texts in order to lead rituals and ceremonies and holidays, celebrations and holidays. You have to have a Kuriheb to help you to lead and conduct and plan properly your rituals, your ceremonies, and holiday celebrations. Who knows all magical matters better than any person. Now, let's go to this magical matters. Magical matters has to do with the gestures, the algorithms, the behavior done in ritual and ceremony. So that's what's meant by magical matters. It doesn't mean that, what you see on TV, hocus pocus. This has to do with ritual and knowing gestures that are done in private that empowers and preserves culture. It empowers the people who use power or have power, who are higher authority, how to keep themselves empowered so they can serve their community, their country, to keep it surviving and being proliferate. No excellent magic was ever hidden from me. In other words, I was entrusted with all things behind closed doors. He who is a keeper of secrets of the king in all matters is him who he loves. So the king trusted him with his personal stuff, with his personal business. Who does what is excellent and is hidden within the gateway in relation to every judgment. So he keeps things excellent. What needs to be out in public is in public, and what needs to stay private stays there. This is the one who is truly a keeper of secrets of the king. So this can be used as a model for your own behavior. You want to be able to say this honestly. You want people to say this about you. That you're excellent. You're someone who could be trusted with information. You're someone who can do private rituals and things like that and keep it there and be trusted. Now he's talking to people. He's talking to the living who pass by. He says, "Oh, you who pass by." Now, in other tombs, they may say, "Oh, you who pass by this tomb." So it's talking to us. Those pass by, you who live. With regard to any person who shall do any evil thing to this tomb of mine in relation to the invocation offerings or in relation to the sole priests. So now he's saying, yo, I got something for people who would do any bad thing to my tomb. I shall make an end for him concerning it in their presence. Fear is not put in me in regarding it, in order that those on earth see and are fearful of noble ox or noble spirits who are created in this entire land. So now, I'm not saying that there was a curse on that guy who opened up King Tut's tomb, but obviously we have many people who say, listen, regarding to those who do an evil thing to this tomb, you see what happened to him. Again, I'm not saying I believe or don't believe, but hey, it is what it is.
What happened to him? What happened to him? Can you tell us quickly?
Oh, he got sick and died.
Okay, boom.
Yeah, you can look that up. The guy who opened up King Tut's tomb, he got sick and died.
Okay.
Yep. So again, I guess it might be karma. I don't know, but we'll let chips fall where they may. So now we're right here where he says the invocation offerings. That's that Hotep Dina Sut we was talking about earlier that we saw in that coffin. An offering which the king gives to, Asar, invocation offering. That's what he's talking about. All right. He says, I went from my town, I went down into the afterlife. I have achieved greatness and reached old age. I carried out Ma'at, which is what the God loves or the nectar loves. I've done righteousness. That's what he's saying. I satisfied with regard to that which he loves or the nectar, which is truly making invocation offerings for the noble ox. Now, go back to the 4 great deeds of Ra. And when he says that he wants people to honor or remember the West. He is remembering the West because he did offerings offerings for those who are noble, those imaku. He did it in private ritual. You would have done it in ceremonies and in holidays, etc. He's done it. I was respectful of my father. I was charming to my mother. Is this not a model? We know that other traditions say honor their mother and their father and all kinds of stuff, right? We were already doing it. This is the old kingdom. This is the sixth dynasty of ancient Kemet. There's no biblical narrative around for thousands of years. Period. And it's still sitting there.
Right, which means it actually existed because it still exists.
It still exists. Right.
Like that.
I buried him. Watch this. I buried him who had no son. Because in the tradition, your children are the ones that's supposed to be in charge of your burial. So if someone didn't have a son or the children, he made sure it was done for them. This is a noble thing. I ferried him over who had no boat, meaning he provided things like transportation to people who had none. I rescued the wretched man from the more powerful one, which means that he stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. He used his power and authority to defend those who didn't have as much power and authority. Which probably means he doesn't like bullies. Okay. He was probably somebody's superhero by doing such. I gave the share of the father to his son. So he would be in charge of different estates. So when a father passes, he made sure that the offspring got their inheritance. For the following is what is said by people who pass by. Look. So this is what he wants people to say about him. Look, he is an Imaku and the beloved one of the Necher. That's what he wants people to say. And he's explaining why he's worthy for people to say it, because this is what he did in his life. He was somebody's superhero. He stood up for people. He made sure that the children got their inheritance from their parents. He charmed his fight. He respected his parents. He honored them. He said, I honored my father and my mother. Mm. All right. And here are references. You can screenshot that if you like. So there's some of the text that I used. All right. I'm going to stop share. All right. Hopefully that was enlightening, at least in the least.
More than in the least. That's being uber modest.
All right. Okay. Questions. Let's talk.
So I have a couple questions. We answered them throughout the chat. I'm going to go to the top because there were some that I wanted to save for the end. You answered that one. Let's see. Where was it? So here's a question. Jason Edwards asked this. Where can we find the calendars? And before you answer, I want that's in the works for me to have as a Tuesday talk, because there are multiple calendars and they kept different types of time. So I want you to stay tuned with that. But Sonjedi, can you answer that question about the calendars?
Okay. So where can you find the calendar? All right. So as Abut implied, that's an entire lesson right there.
It is.
Yeah. But I'll just give you a couple of bullet points before I can say, hey, where can you find it? And kind of give you a guide to see, so you can look in the right direction. You know what you're looking for. So
Right.
there's actually three calendar systems that run concurrently. So you have the solar, or actually, let me try to go in order based on um, uh, some early 20th century writers. You have the stellar calendar. Stellar is another word for stars. So calendar based on the stars. So you have stellar calendar. And then you have the lunar calendar. So, of course, time based on tracking the moon. And then you have the solar calendar, which, of course, time based on tracking the sun. So, and then when you're looking up what they call an Egyptian calendar, you have what's called the civil calendar. So, civil calendar, that's where they're plotting holidays and things like that. All right. So, these are words and phrases that you're going to see. So, when you deal with sidereal time or the star calendar or timekeeping, you get 360 days. So, people were using that, but then realized that the sun being involved, there's those 5 extra days. So apparently, according to early research, that originally man or humans were tracking the stars. So 360 days, that's a 360-degree cycle because they were looking up and noticed the processions and things like that. But then, of course, you got the lunar, which I think is 354 days. Is that correct? Anybody can look that up and you can put it in the chat. So I think it's 364 or 64 days, something like that. But we know that you got to add in the sun. So that's 365 days. Well, 365 and 1/4 days, actually. So that's little specifics there. Now, the calendar, they started their year when the Itaru flood, the river, because the word for river, one of the words for river is Itaru. You can say Happy, so that's a deity associated with the river. So Happy River is the same logic that we say for the Oshun River, Yemaya, etc. When we name these bodies after our deity spirits, same logic. So around the time when the Happy River would flood in Kemet, usually would occur about the same time where you have the heliacal rising of the Spidet star or the Sirius star after a 70-day absence from our visual spectrum in the northern hemisphere. So it disappears for about 70 days, which corresponds to the dog days of summer, if you will. And when she reappears, it usually happens around the time of the flooding, which accordingly at one point also happened around summer solstice. So you have these three great events that happen at the same time, which mark the beginning of a year. But as time goes on, because of the rotation of the Earth, 23.5 degrees, and then the universe actually expands. We know that from astrophysics. This, our ancestors may or may not have understood that, which they didn't have to understand that in order to have intelligence. But universe expands. So this is why you get these, you have to make adjustments, leap years, all that kind of stuff. So universe expands, and then the Earth is on the 23.5 degree axis, etc. And then orbits are not perfect orbits, if you will. Planets and galaxies and superclusters, etc. So things expand. So that's why the so-called calendar moves. So the new year used to be in July. So now it's September, technically. If you follow the Kemetic calendar from ancient time and you followed it year by year, you would probably end up with September. So going back to Coptic, so the Coptic calendar, y'all can look that up. It's the ancient Egyptian calendar. What it would actually look like today. They just use Christianity laid over top of it. But when we take those saints out, which those are actually Neteru, and different heroes and legends, you take that out, you get ancient Kemet. So now, if you want to say bootleggery, you can if you want, but I'll let y'all do that. But it preserves. You just gotta if you understand the culture, you could just go back to ancient time and put the ancient names in, and you got it. So Coptic calendar follows the date. So around September 10th, 11th, and 12th, sometimes September 13th. But it's usually like the 11th and 12th each year, the beginning of the Coptic calendar, which is the Egyptian calendar. So to my knowledge, the only now I'm not promoting this organization at all. I'm just telling you what they have for as a calendar. So the Earth Center's calendar, it follows that that trajectory, the same that the Coptic calendar. Now, of course, I had a conversation with one of them. Again, this doesn't reflect the organization because I have not spoken to everybody in the organization. And again, I'm not promoting it. I'm just telling you where I got my information from. I did ask, oh, okay, so y'all basically follow the Coptic calendar because that's what you do. I mean, and it's okay. I was told no by this one person, again, because I want no one out in the universe to misquote me. This one person told me, no, we follow the ancient. I'm like, okay, just say it's the same as the Coptic calendar, which is the same as the Ethiopian calendar. It's okay, you know. But again, it was that one person. So I don't know what the leadership says because it wasn't necessary for me to have a conversation with the leadership about the calendar because I have enough knowledge to make a proper judgment. But as far as the way the calendar goes, they're pretty accurate. They put the 10 days because a Kemetic week or Deacon week, if you will, or Heru is 10 days. Okay. All the evidence shows it's 10 days. There's no 7, there's no 9, it's 10 days. So, and there's 3 weeks of that. So 3 10-day periods for 1 month. So a month is 30 days. Not 28, not 29, it's 30 days. All the evidence, all the documentation, I got books up there with translation from text and stela, etc., all show it. So you get 12 months of that. There's 3 seasons. So the first season, 4 months. 4 months is 1 season. So the first season is the season of flooding or Ankh, okay, the inundation. The second season is Paret, okay, the becomingness or the emergence. That season, 4 months of that. And then the next 4 months, which is Shamu, which is season of low water. And then after that, you have the 5, what they call intercalary days. So that's a 5-day month, if you will. Okay. Or what's called the 5 days upon the year. Because there's a story behind that actually in the mythology about Nut and Nut not being permitted to give birth any day of the year. And then again, Jehuti figured out how to get days or time back for her, which ended up being 5 days. So each of those days, she symbolically, remember, this is mythology, she gave birth to Asaru or Asari, first day. Second day, she gives birth to Haru'ur. Third day, she gives birth to Satesh or Sateshi. Then the 4th day, she gives birth to Oseta. And then the last day, she gives birth to Nebuhet. So that's 5. Again, it's mythology. It's about the values of the culture, etc. But it says a lot about that culture.
That's right.
And we can celebrate that. So at the end of the 12th month, you use that to celebrate that time. You know, but that time in the culture, they say it's supposed to be like you're supposed to be real cautious in those days. So, which probably had more so to do with what was happening in their environment. So then they turned it spiritual, if you will, because around that time, it's probably like a lot of like winds that bring diseases, etc. So like that season called Scorpio, if you will, that during that time period, if you will, they associated with diseases because it strikes like a scorpion with poison. So, but again, that's a whole other conversation. I'm just giving you all little tidbits, to look up on your own. If you get the book, Introduction to African Civilization by John G. Jackson, he talks about that in that book, about the seasons. I'm sorry, the so-called zodiac, the origin of the zodiac, how what you're calling Leo and things like that, it can only be explained in the Nile Valley. The Greeks can't explain it because they inherited it from, think of Babylonians and the Kemetic people. Of course, that they didn't use a crab they used kepper per se, and we know in the Cillian of Dendera or Tot and Terry, where the word Dendera comes from. You see that it's called a sky map, if you will. In that place, you see kepper, the beetle. In fact, the word kepper is also a word for beetle, actually. So, which is why they use a beetle. So now, I just want to give you that as far as calendar, so it give you an idea of what you're looking for out there. Again, Earth Center's calendar is really good. It's accurate. 10 days, the deities that's associated with each deacon week is accurate. So yeah, and again, that's as far as I go as far as Earth Center. So that's my disclaimer. So I don't want to give people the wrong impression.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you for that explanation with the calendars. People ask about it, and people are accustomed to one calendar because that's what we have. But our ancestors recognized all of our energies and forces. So there's another question. So I'm going to ask it, and Sonjedi, if you need the context again, because we kind of got away from it, just let us know, and then he can add to it. So the question comes from Question Me. Do you think that's why they admired or held the baboon in some high regard? Evolution. Serious question, because it makes sense to me. So I want to add a little something on there too. Even as a little kid, when I was Christian, and I do air quotes because I really didn't believe much of it, even as a kid. To me, the existence of people was proof of evolution. And people would say that, and it was also, in my opinion, the existence of the divine, because, where do we come from? And then I would let them answer and give all their answers. And then my question was always, where did the first life particle come from? Where did the first life, atom or whatever word I used come from? But that's basically what I was asking as a little kid. And then you let them give their explanation. And then I would say, yeah, but where did the first life particle come from to make that? It just came out of nowhere. Something can't come from nothing. And I said, what that came from was God. I said God at the time. That was God. That spark, whatever you want to call it, you call it whatever you want to call it. What it is God. Because if you say it's something other than that, I'm gonna ask you where it came from. If you're telling me that it's a natural part of the earth and the world that we see today, and everything else descends from that, then it would have the same quality of something cannot come from nothing. So the very first life particle cannot be the child of nothing, because that DNA, if you will, or those characteristics would be a part of anything that came from it, and we would have all these spontaneous particles just popping up everywhere. So anyway, I kind of diverged a bit. Getting back to the question, let me read it again. Oh no, where is it? I gotta scroll. Yeah, and do you think that's why they admired or held the baboon in some high regard? Evolution. So I don't know if you need more context to that from what was said earlier, but that's his question. I thought it was a good question.
So you're trying to add more light here.
Okay. The other question, which could be easy, can you explain the Feast of Sekhmet, the actual feast that the Temple of Anu has? Tone wants to go. It's December 31st. I went a few years ago. It was a lot of fun. So the question about the baboon, and then explanation on Sekhmet.
Okay, so I'll answer the question about the baboon, and then we'll go back to the Feast of Sekhmet Temple of Anu. So the baboon and evolution. So to clarify, human beings do not come from monkeys. So I just want to clarify that. I'm not saying that you're implying that,
Right,
but
right, right.
we have people out there who will get that impression that that's what we're saying. No, human beings do not come from monkeys. Human beings do not come from monkeys. Human beings do not come from monkeys. Okay. Baboons are part of the ape family, and human beings are part of the ape family. So we have a common ancestor. Okay. Common ancestor. So science it demonstrates it left and right, up and down. Okay. So we have a common ancestor, but we don't come from monkeys because there will be no monkeys, anymore. So the reason the baboon is used is because they resemble us. So we associated them with us. They have appendages like we do because arms, hands, legs, feet. Those are appendages. They have same number of phalanges, fingers and toes, etc. They can use tools. So you simply use rock. They can use rocks intelligently, similar to how we may do it. Some monkeys, they use sticks to bore into the ground to get insects for food. So we associate that with intelligence. So that's why one of the reasons why Jehuti has a zootype of a baboon. So hopefully that answers the question on that. Feast of Sekhmet. Feast of Sekhmet again, New Year's Eve. If you go to the templeofanu.com, that's where you start to see where the ticket sales are. So go online, look for the Temple of Anu, go to the website, and then you'll see links for tickets for the Feast of Sekhmet, taking place in Newark, New Jersey, this year, December 31st.
So we have 2 questions, and then that's it. One is, do you know if our ancestors recognize the it just chopped out. Oh no, wait a minute. Do you know? Oh, there. Do you know if our ancestors recognize the planet Pluto in the zodiac? Is it a part of the Dendra or Dendera? It says Dendra, but she might mean that.
Don't recall right offhand. I can look that up real quick. Okay. You said Pluto?
Yes.
Yeah. And I have no problem saying I don't know something.
For the sake of time, we can if you want to look it up, you can look it up and hit me back because because I want to also put up your information. This is the last question, which is I'm going to say what Jason Edwards said. This is what I always think about. The baboons gave praise to Ra, the sun every morning, and even the myth Jehuti is the companion of Ra. When I hear baboon, that's what I think of, and I think about the first, and the 4 sons of Haru, baboon, and the air, and the breath, and he is first, the first male deity in the opening of the way. And so that's what I think of when I see baboon, hear baboon, like instantly, always, like without fail. So that's it. I think that's it. I hope I didn't miss your question. Yeah, we're gonna circle back on Pluto, and I'm gonna ask Sonjedi to come back and talk about the calendars, but he doesn't know that yet, so don't tell him. So I'm gonna update the flyer, and it's gonna have his contact information. I read somewhere in here that they weren't able to find your YouTube, but I want to make sure that your new YouTube gets its due, space and time. So just text that to me. I'll update everything. But it's Scribe Sonjedi on YouTube. But again, guys, just come back wherever you saw his flyer. I'm gonna update it, and it'll be there. You can also DM the Shrine of Ma'at. I get those. You can also hit me up, Yoga Girl Sai, on Facebook. That's my personal DM, and also Yoga Girl Sai on Instagram. I would appreciate it if you would follow me on Instagram. I'm there most of the time and I can get back to you super quickly. And Sonjedi and I can text, communicate, whatever, and I'll give you your answer. Okay.
Mhm.
So I think that's all for the questions. And once again, I want to thank you, Sonjedi, for coming on. People love it when you're here. The chat is always dynamic. People ask questions, they answer questions, they with each other, and ask questions for you. So I definitely want to have you back on to do the calendars. I've tried to figure out who I want on, which calendars. Like that is something that's of interest to me, and I think it's important for us to have a calendar so we can situate ourselves as African people. Remember, we got to practice this. We got to do this. We can't just learn it and talk about it. We have to do it. And I had the Earth Center on. His name escapes me at the moment, but he was my first or second guest last year. I think he was my first and second guest actually, because we talked about the calendars. Okay. So you can dig in the crates and look for that, or you can go to the Earth Center, get the calendar. It's a beautiful calendar. It's laid out with the 10 days of the Deccan. It's always good to have confirmation from Sonjedi that something is accurate. This man does research constantly. If there's anybody on the forefront of deciphering and using and explaining and teaching the Medu Neter, it's Sonjedi. So like y'all need to hit up his Cash App for real, because what he knows and what he's learned has taken time and money and energy and effort. He deserves, the due diligence in the coin purse, people. Okay. So, Sanjeti, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you. I like being around smart people, and me personally, because I'm a bit of a nerd, so I appreciate that. So, thank you so much for being on Tuesday Talk. I really hope everybody enjoyed Tuesday Talk for tonight and got something out of it. I can come back and look at it again. You can take notes, form study groups, you guys. Form Tuesday Talk study groups. Just what we discussed here, you can take your notes, do your research, learn it, teach your parents and siblings and friends, etc. And you can have all the fun you want with it, and make sure that you take this information and that you do something with it. You apply it, you practice it. And I would absolutely love feedback so I can give you guys what y'all want. I'll do my best. Okay. So with that, Sanjeti, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll be
Mhm.
seeing each other again. And thank you everybody and Tuesday Talk who supports every week. I really truly appreciate it. Shema Ma'at. Have a great evening. Mwah. Shema Matap. Sanjeti, if you could just leave, I will hit you up right quick.
Okay. All right.